Hey guys, this is Warhawk Beyond 2040, bringing to you yet another awesome yet crazy theory. And as we all know already, that the third instalment of Spider-Man is set to be released for 2021, and with everything that I've heard and read about this third instalment so far, this is shaping up to be quite possibly the most epic movie that the MCU has put out to date. I mean, so far from what I've learned, we've heard that Charlie Cox is coming back as Matt Murdock / Daredevil, which I am super excited about. I've been hearing whispers that we could see Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire come back as Peter Parker / Spider-Man. I've heard that Kirsten Dunst could be reprising her role as Mary Jane Watson. Jamie Foxx is set to reprise his role of Electro, as well as Alfred Molina as his role of Dr. Octopus. I mean, how much can they pack into this third instalment of Spider-Man? I mean, it's going to be longer than 2 hours. I think this movie could possibly be 3 hours. I mean, if it gets any longer, we may have to make this into 2 parts. I mean, this movie is just getting bigger and bigger by the minute, and all I've got to say is bring it on. Now, I have heard rumours there is a strong possibility we may see the Spider-Verse be brought into the MCU for this third instalment of Spider-Man. Now, bear in mind, we already had a Spider-Verse movie back in 2018 called Into the Spider-Verse, which was more of an animated movie, and in my opinion, it was absolutely fantastic. But if that is the case, that the MCU want to bring the Spider-Verse into this third instalment of Spider-Man, then it would mark the first time in history that we would see every single actor who has ever played the role of Spider-Man together on the big screen in live action. So this video is going to be my theory on how I would bring the Spider-Verse into the MCU for the third instalment of Spider-Man. So as we all remember, at the end of Far From Home, Mysterio outed Peter Parker as Spider-Man by playing a live video stream of Peter Parker being seen without his mask on, and that's how we pretty much left the film, with Spider-Man standing there in shock. Now, I would have this movie take place roughly around about 1 year after the events of Far From Home, so everybody knows that Peter Parker is Spider-Man, and obviously he's in custody pending trial for the supposed murder of Quentin Beck, aka Mysterio. So for the film's opener, we could have a scene of Peter Parker just basically talking to someone about what his life's been like since he became Spider-Man, and he could also talk about Tony Stark and the responsibility that he puts on him, and we could see that he's talking to Matt Murdock, who is his defense lawyer, and Matt could turn around and say to Peter that, you know, judging from everything you've told me about yourself and all of the good you've done as Spider-Man, I think you've been set up, but as your defense lawyer and all of the evidence stacked against you, it's not looking very good, Mr. Parker, but I will do everything I can to help get your story put out across to the jury. And Peter says, well, if I am found guilty of Mysterio's murder, how long am I looking at? And Matt could say, well, Peter, I'm not going to lie to you because that wouldn't be right, but if you are found guilty, you're looking at least a life sentence, 25 years at most. But if you could get out on parole for good behaviour, you're looking at least 8 years. And Peter could just break down in tears and say, Mr. Murdock, if I do get sent down, can you do me just one favour? And Matt could say, of course, name it. Can you make sure that Ned, MJ and my Aunt May are safe? Because I know I have enemies out there who know that I'm Spider-Man and they'll try and target them. Can you make sure that they're safe for me? And Matt says, of course, Mr. Parker, but don't give up just yet. We're going to fight this with everything we've got. Now, suit up. Court's in half an hour. I'll be outside. And for the first half of the movie, I would have it take place in court with Peter Parker standing trial and Matt Murdock by his side as his defence lawyer, with MJ, Aunt May and Ned in the dock with the rest of the jury. So I would have Matt Murdock is basically pleading his case to the judge and the jury for all of the good work that Peter Parker has done as Spider-Man. So I would have him say something like this: "Ever since my client, Mr. Peter Parker, became Spider-Man, he has done nothing but good, not just for the city, but for the entire world. Him and a band of costumed heroes who call themselves the Avengers saved the entire world and brought us back from the brink of death due to the snap. And I ask all of you, including you, Your Honor, why would Spider-Man suddenly become a killer? And think back to the day Spider-Man first appeared on the scene. Can any of you ever recall Spider-Man ever attempting to take a life, or has taken a life? My client, Mr. Parker, he's more than just a kid. He's a hero, and he has done nothing but good, and I believe that he has been set up. So I'm asking each and every one of you to look deep down inside yourselves and ask yourselves, is Spider-Man a killer? And if he is, why would he start killing people now?" That's all, Your Honour. And the judge could turn around and say, "Well, Mr. Murdock, you bring up some very good points, and although Spider-Man has done a lot of good for this city and for the entire world, the facts are the facts, and we've seen the footage. Spider-Man is a killer, and he took out his rage on another human being, Quentin Beck, who everybody calls Mysterio. And even though Mysterio was a criminal, Spider-Man still took the law into his own hands and took another person's life. So, based on everything that you've told us and all of the evidence, Mr. Murdock, myself and the jury will come to a decision regarding Mr. Parker's fate. Court is adjourned, and then we could have the jury and the judge come back and say, based on everything you've heard today, I ask all of you now, how do you find the defendant, Peter Parker? Guilty or not guilty? And then they could turn around and say, guilty, and Aunt May and MJ and Ned break down, and Peter Parker breaks down and says, "But Matt," and Matt says, "It's okay, Peter. I will appeal for you. Just relax. We'll fight this. Something's not right. Just trust me. Justice is blind, but we'll beat this somehow." And then Peter Parker is taken away and is locked up in jail for the next 25 years. So as we see Peter Parker is sitting in his prison cell in tears, the entire room goes dark, and we then see a portal open inside his prison cell, and a figure walks out, and it is none other than Doctor Strange himself, who freezes time and has a conversation with Peter Parker about all of the events that's happened. And Peter Parker says to Doctor Strange, "You've got to get me out of here, Doctor Strange. I'm not a killer. I didn't kill Quentin Beck. I'm innocent, I swear." And Doctor Strange could say, "It's okay, Mr. Parker. I'm here to help. I saw what happened. Matt Murdock did an excellent job defending you, but I'm sorry. There was nothing more he could do, but there is something that I could do for you, Mr. Parker. But I am going to need your help." And Peter could say, "What can I do? I'm in prison. I'm locked up. You know, Spider-Man's no good." "You're right. Your Spider-Man can't help us. But I believe others out there can help you clear your name." And Peter could say, "But how? How is that possible? What do you mean, more Spider-Men? I'm Spider-Man." And Doctor Strange could say, "Yes, but you do realise that there is more than just one Earth in this universe." "You mean the multiverse? I thought that was just made up by Quentin Beck." And Doctor Strange could say, No, my boy. The multiverse is very much real, and there are other versions of Spider-Man in those Earths, And I believe, with their help, we can clear your name and prove to the entire world that you were set up by Quentin Beck. Yeah, but I can't help you. As I just said, I'm in prison. So, no, Mr. Parker, you need to listen to me. I can freeze time, so therefore you can leave, but I will create an illusion that you are still here in prison, so no one will suspect otherwise. So what we're going to do is, we are going to go around different Earths within the multiverse and find the best versions of Spider-Man to help you. Do you trust me? Yeah, of course I do. I don't know, Doctor Strange. I've let myself down. I've let Aunt May down, Ned down, MJ, and most important of all, I let Mr. Tony Stark down. And Doctor Strange could say, that is not entirely true. Everyday heroes make mistakes, but the important thing is we learn from them. Now, you trusted Quentin Beck. That's not your fault. You weren't to know that Quentin Beck was a criminal, but mistakes can be corrected. So, are you ready to begin your journey, Mr. Parker? And Peter could say, yeah, I'm ready. I'll do anything to help. But what about my costume? You know, if we're going to need all the Spider-Men to help me, you know, I'm going to need my spider suit. And Doctor Strange could say, don't worry, it's all taken care of, but we can't stay here any longer. We have to go. Time is of the essence. Let's go right now. And then we see Peter Parker and Doctor Strange leave through the portal. And then we see Peter Parker and Doctor Strange are travelling through time, and Doctor Strange explains to him that due to the events of Thanos snapping half of the universe, it created a breach in the multiverse, and it's allowed several villains from different Earths to come to this Earth. And Peter asks, how is that even possible? And Doctor Strange explains that when it comes to the multiverse, anything is possible, and all of these villains, such as the Vulture, Mysterio, who is still alive by the way, Dr. Octopus, Electro, all these villains have all banded together from different Earths for one common goal, to defeat Spider-Man. And Peter Parker remembers, wait a minute, I remember now, the Vulture, Liz's dad, he knows I'm Spider-Man. Do you think it's possible that he could have told Quentin Beck about me? And Doctor Strange explains that there is a high chance, but the Spider-Man we saw in the footage was not actually you. It was someone impersonating you. Really? Peter says, who could have impersonated me? Only one person who could have impersonated you, a master of disguise, Dmitry Smerdakov, known better as the Chameleon. Oh my god, the Chameleon? But Dmitry, wait a minute, that name rings a bell. Dmitry's the guy from S.H.I.E.L.D. That's right, he managed to access all the information about you and gave it to Quentin Beck. This plot's been going on for months. These guys have been working together to stop Spider-Man at any cost, but we're going to bring in the heavy artillery. So before we know it, we see Doctor Strange pluck each different version of Spider-Man and bring them back to our Earth. And before we know it, we see all the versions of Spider-Man in the same room at the same time. So we see the Tom Holland Spider-Man, the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man, and the Andrew Garfield Spider-Man all in the same room at the same time. And Peter Parker, the MCU version, looks up and says, oh my god, I didn't think it was possible that there would be more than one version of Spider-Man. This is absolutely insane. And we see the Sam Raimi Spider-Man, that's the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man, look at the MCU Spider-Man and says, hey kid, heard you're in a bit of trouble, so the old doctor's brought us in to give you a hand. And we see the Andrew Garfield Spider-Man look at Peter with a smile of approval and says, it's been a while since I put this on. And MCU Spider-Man could say, what do you mean? So, well, on my Earth, Gwen Stacy died because I wasn't able to save her. At least knowing that I can help another fellow Spider-Man from another Earth, that's some consolation prize for me. So what are we up against? And Doctor Strange could explain that. Well, basically, really, the Chameleon, aka Dmitry Smerdligov, has framed this Spider-Man for the murder of Quentin Beck. However, Quentin Beck is still alive and well, and different versions of different villains from the multiverse have banded together, calling themselves the Sinister Six, and their goal is to destroy all Spider-Men at all cost. And all three Spider-Men look at each other and says, well, looks like we're going to give them 6 times the headache, guys. What do you say? One more time? And Peter says, I don't know really. I'm a bit nervous. I've never faced this many villains before. And you see the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man says, hey, look. On my Earth, I had to fight my own best friend. This is nothing to me. And the Andrew Garfield Spider-Man says, yeah, I mean, after all, I had to fight my own teacher. He turned into a reptile. So, this is nothing new to me. And Peter, Tom Holland Spider-Man looks up and says, oh my god, your Earths sound absolutely crazy. And I thought mine was. And Doctor Strange says, look, we haven't got time for this. We've got a job to do. We've got to fight these guys now. Best of luck to you, gentlemen, and be careful. And shortly after that, we would see all 3 Spider-Men go head to head with every single member of the Sinister Six in an epic battle. And as a result of each member of the Sinister Six being defeated, we also would see Doctor Strange sending each villain back to their respective Earths and timelines and back in their prison cells. And also we would have Doctor Strange give Matt Murdock the evidence that's needed to clear Peter Parker's name, and as a result of that, the sentence is thrown out and Peter Parker is released from prison and is reunited with MJ, Ned and Aunt May. And then we see all 3 Spider-Men looking over New York City with proud smiles on their faces, and Peter turns to the other 2 Spider-Men. It's really good to know that there are other Spider-Men out there in the multiverse doing what I do, and that's protecting the world. And the other 2 Spider-Men look back at Peter and say, same here, Wallcrawler, same here. And as Doctor Strange opens the portal and says, gentlemen, I believe it's time for all of you to go home, and thanks for your help. And the other 2 Spider-Men says, anytime, Doc, anytime. Oh, and Peter, one more thing. Word of advice, don't talk to strangers. Got it? And Peter laughs and says, got it. Alright. Take care, Wallcrawler. Bye, guys. And then Doctor Strange appears and says, actually, that is good advice, but I have some advice of my own to give you. Don't try to be the man you think Tony wants you to be. Be the man that Tony expects you to be. And most important of all, be your own man. Nobody is in charge of your destiny but yourself, Peter. Just remember that. And one last thing. This is going to be the last time that I'm going to clean up your mess, Peter Parker, because I guarantee you there won't be a next time. You've been given a second chance now. Don't screw it up. Understood? And Peter says, yes, sir. I understand. Good. Oh, and if you ever need my help, if you're in a situation, you know where to find me. And also, one more thing. Knock before you come barging into my study. I am quite a busy man. Good day, Mr. Parker. And we see Doctor Strange walk through the portal and disappear. And that's pretty much my theory on how I would bring the Spider-Verse into the MCU. Now, of course, as we all know, things can play out very differently, but I would love to see them bring the Spider-Verse into the MCU like this, because I think it would make the 3rd instalment of Spider-Man even more epic. But time will tell, really. We'll just have to wait and see what happens. So, I'm going to wrap this up now. What's your thoughts on the possibility of the Spider-Verse coming to the MCU? Would you like to see them do it like this, or do you have a different way you'd bring the Spider-Verse in? What about the idea of possibly different villains from different Earths coming together to form the Sinister Six? Do you think that could work? And they take on all different versions of Spider-Man. You know what to do, guys. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, leave your thoughts and comments down below, and I will be back next time with a follow-up video to this theory, and it's going to be a little surprise for everyone, and I think everyone is going to love what I'm going to come up with. So until next time, take care everybody, and stay safe.